Hi everybody, my name is Mateusz and I work as a senior iOS developer at Passion, which is a software house based in Warsaw, Poland. Today I would like to show you different point of view of MVVM architecture. I will try to answer some basic question. Does MVVM solve any particular problem? Do we need this solution? Does it help us with something? And why is it so popular? But at first, I have to emphasize that I'm really proud of having really strong tech team in our iOS department. I don't say that because it seems to me or it's just my imagination, but it is based on my experience in cooperation with other companies. So I do love unit testing to the limits, and I know that nowadays every single company say about unit tests, but do not only we speak about them, but we write them. So this is the difference. And personally, I believe in TDD, so I write tests before real implementation. The agenda for today is as follows. To begin with, I will explain you briefly why I decided to do this presentation. Secondly, together we will answer the question, from what technology does it come from? Furthermore, I will show you MVVM in the iOS world, and then I will make some conclusions, show you some alternative solutions, and there will be a time for questions. Okay, let's start. Why anti-pattern and what's wrong with MVVM? The correct answer is nothing. There is nothing wrong about MVVM itself. It's all about how people use this pattern and the thing they mix different concepts together. And the most important fact is that they do not comply with the basic programming rules from object-oriented programming, like SOLID, which is acronym from 5 really important programming rules: single responsibility principle, open-closed, risk of substitution, interface segregation, and dependency inversion. The thing which motivates me to do this talk was, of course, Swift code. Even though it was quite challenging to me, like you can see here, in Swift code, of course, including mine 3 years ago, the code which I saw in other companies, code from open source project available on GitHub, and tons of articles which promote MVVM as a golden mean for everything. But let's start from the beginning of MVVM. I'm wondering if this concept new to someone here? Let's raise your hand, don't be afraid. Okay, so everything is clear. The first 2 words are self-explanatory. And view model, last part, is an abstraction of a view, which exposes public properties and commands. Here we can see that really important part of MVVM architecture is data binding. We can call this binder, which automates communication between view model and a view. Do you know by whom and when MVVM was created? Any guesses from the audience? Sorry? Yeah, it's good answer, but by whom? Okay, your answer is correct, of course. It was invented by Microsoft, 2 architects, Ken Cooper and Ted Peters, to simplify event-driven programming of user interfaces. But it was introduced for the first time by John Gossman in 2005, one of WPF and Silverlight architects. WPF is, well, to put it simply, is a graphical subsystem for rendering user interface in Windows-based application. Let's look at the basic approach in C# world. On this slide, you can see customer view model class written in C#. It keeps a customer model object, and we have properties like text customer name, which maps customer name property from a model, and text amount property, which maps amount property from a model. On the second slide, we can see rest of this class. Label amount color, which has some logic connected with amount property. Higher than 2000, it returns blue. Higher than 2000 and lower than 1500 returns red, and in other case returns yellow. And property is merit. Nothing special. And secondly, we have a simple function which allows us to display our view model on user interface. So basically, it's a code which binds our view model with UI elements. Here you can see the table which shows the C# code on the left and the respective XAML code on the right. So rather than writing the full C# code, you can use XAML file. But the best part of it is that you don't even need to write this binding code in C#, because IDE allows you to select UI elements, press F4, and specify bindings. This step will insert the binding code automatically in the XAML file for you. So it's really, really powerful. The binding code is fully generated by IDE. As you can see, MVVM was created to solve a concrete issue on specific platform like WPF. In that case, it simplifies connection between XAML file and C# code. Let's dive into MVVM from the iOS perspective. The main problem with it, and it was in all implementation which I saw, that we are delegating all action, all gestures like swipe, tap gestures, data from our view controller to a view model. View model does something with it, and then we need to get back to our view controller. So it sounds like unnecessary layer in our subsystem. You need to create binding, pass data, pass all actions from our UI to a view model, and then do the rest in your view controller anyway. So important fact is that view model means different things for different people. And I found two opposite definitions which describe very well how view model is seen. Let's look at the first one. As you can see, it's quite long, but it's on purpose. Let me read it now. View model is an abstraction. It's an abstract object between a model object and a view controller, which performs any data transformation necessary for presentation, as well as sometimes networking and database access, might do a little form validation and any other task you feel like throwing in there, and acts as a jack-of-all-trades object originally intended to transfer weight away from your controllers, but ultimately creates a new kitchen sink for you to dump responsibilities into. It was created by Soroush Kanlu, and looking only at the definition like this, it's obvious that view model does definitely too many things. I want to show you my code from one of my previous projects. Well, I have to admit that I'm not quite proud of it, despite the fact this class has 100% code coverage. Let's look at this code. We have property title, item view model, so another nested view models, and properties which indicates some loading action. Secondly, we have some functions for presenting some model, and for networks method, and last method connected with pagination. It wasn't the most hardcore example. There are many like this, and you can ask, okay, but what is wrong with it, with this long interface? Let's analyze this code together. We have a logic for some view state, properties which allows us to display some alert or new screen, cell tab callbacks, a notification about refreshing list, other nested view models, another controllers delegate, and system notification. I just want to remind you that this is only an interface. It's not real implementation, so it will be much, much longer. So from my perspective, view model like this is nothing else than trash. You put everything in here, and okay, you can say that your view controller now is super clean and file is amazingly short, but it sounds definitely like a life hack. Do we really want to solve this problem like that? Let's get back to my view model, which I showed you previously, and let's analyze all components. Not only all components, I mean not only view model part, but view controller and data bindings. I will show you real numbers from my project. In this specific implementation, view controller, which was binded to this saved list view model, has 115 lines of code. Not bad. Bindings has 190 lines of code, and view model has 280 lines of code. It's definitely too much logic in one place. And I want to say that everyone makes mistakes, but it's much more important what you will do with this knowledge in the future. Let's look at the second definition, which is much, much simpler. View model is a model for a view, isn't it? Yes, it is. This is usually dump struct that is passed to a view to populate its subviews. As simple as that. It's just description of our view. Regarding my previous slide, we have equivalent of our saved list view model without action and network methods. And we can see that it's just a description of our view. Another example could be like this, that we have title, which is NS attributed string, or icon, which is UI image. Okay, I've already presented this equivalent of my Massive view model, but now it looks much, much simpler. But what about those action methods? Where we should put them? Let's think. Those methods definitely control something. So maybe we should put them to kind of class which has a troll inside. The thing which probably comes to your mind is, okay, but right now we will not improve anything because we will end up with model view controller, which causes that we start to worry that it will be massive view controller. No, it won't. We don't like massive view controllers. Don't worry, we can handle this in a better way. For example, using many view controllers. To prove that it works really well and it's scalable, I will provide some data from our application that we made at El Paso 1 year ago. Real life example app. We had 235,000 lines of code, over 6,000 Swift files, 8,200 unit tests, 204 UI view controllers. Average file length was 37 lines. Code coverage was 99.2%, and file over 150 lines does not compile. Only 88 files from those 6,000 has more than 100 lines. I know that it's really surprising and it blows your mind that this class should be responsible for controlling the view. It's even hard to guess it by its name. Oh wait, it's not hard because it has controller inside its name. So I don't get it why people try to put whole logic to the magic object called view model, which can do everything for us. We can easily split our view model to separate classes, which will be consistent with an SRP rule, like services for API network calls, data providers, which transform an API response to be easily readable by the view, notification handler for managing different types of notification, database repositories for storing objects, and many child view controllers. Fun fact, During the MCE conference in 2015, guy from Facebook told us that like button in Facebook app is a separate view controller. So like you can see, it's doable. Real life bugs. Do you like bugs? I don't. Now I will show you a basic application which I made for this presentation. It contains table view with items, nothing special. Each cell has a buy button which shows a confirmation alert. There is a possibility to go into details after tapping on item. And now we can see the video. And please pay attention to the fact that we are displaying the same amount of data on our list and on the details screen. So we have an image, product name, price, and detailed info, which is shipment and auction duration. Here we can see the same amount of data. The most important part of this code is that we are passing the same instance of our view model to the details view controller. A good reason to do this could be the fact that we don't want to make network call again. It won't be efficient. We don't want to fetch data and images one more time. In our view model, we have a ID property, title, button tapped property, which is a closure. It will be invoked every time when user tap on button. Some present alert function, which allows us to display UI alert controller, and byproduct function, which does network call. Let's look at the code of our details view controller. Here we have setup item action function, and we can see that inside this function we just set up our closure button tapped, and inside this closure we are invoking our present alert function. And final result of this implementation will be a crash in a runtime, because we didn't release our closure after deallocating our details view controller. Of course, we can easily fix this issue, and we can set nil button tapped property, but it's more like walk around. Let's look at RxSwift implementation instead of closures. Here we can see that in setup item action function we use RxSwift binding instead of setting closure. And final result of this implementation you can see that here we received some console log after tapping on buy button, and we can see that we received our print in list view controller as well, and we don't want to achieve this behavior. It works like that because the list view controller is still in memory, and it's part of a navigation stack, and we use the same instance of our view model. We didn't receive a crash because we have a dispose bug, and when controller is deallocated, we destroy this binding. So in our MVVM architecture, we are trying to delegate everything from our controller to view model, and then from view controller to view model. From view controller to view model. It's definitely an unnecessary layer in our iOS world. Let's look at this image, which shows us the example of view controller from the past application which I made. Who wants to bet how many view controllers are there? Any guesses from the audience? Almost? Yeah, 8 is good answer. Because there is one parent which contains 5 children, and one of them, this fifth one, contains another 2 children. So together we have 7 child controllers and 1 parent. I said previously that we had 204 UI view controllers in our application, and I just want to add that 75 of them are parent, just like this one, this dashboard controller. So others are children. Here you can see that we have hamburger menu on the top, and it's just a button. It is a single UI view controller which allows us to display side menu. Here we can see the implementation of our dashboard controller. It's quite easy. We have one dependency children factory which allows us to create lazily controllers, children controllers, and rest of this class looks like this, that we have child controllers array which allows us to specify specific order of our child controllers, and we have one function for embedding all of them inside our stack view. My favorite statement, which I heard from people who want to still use MVVM, and the first one, get rid of Massive ViewController. One of the goals of MVVM on iOS is clean up the mess of responsibilities that are usually included in our view controllers. But finally, it ends up with small view controller and massive, sorry, and a massive view model. Sorry. I found a really good quote which sums this up. Extracting logic from our view controller is nothing else than moving the junk to a different drawer. So you clean up one place and make a mess in a different one. Or it's just like extracting code, and it's my favorite. It's just like extracting code responsible for UI table view data source implementation to extension. And okay, your view controller now is super short and has 80 lines of code, but you have 25 different extensions for this controller. So it's just hiding a problem, not good solution. When I recall these arguments that MVVM makes my apps more testable, I recall my conversation with a colleague from one of my previous projects. And let's take a look at this together. Let's name this guy John. John, we do MVVM because it's really easy to test our view models. Okay, so please show me the tests. John, we don't have them. Why? I asked. Because logic is quite simple. But you said that you made view models to extract business logic from your view controller because it was too complex in one place. Am I right? Yes, it's true, and it's easy to test. So with MVVM, our apps are more testable. Without MVVM, less testable. You can answer this question on your own. I have a good argument to prove that it's so popular and it's perfect solution with RxSwift. There are many articles on Medium, and recently I have had 4 recruitment calls, and everybody asked about MVVM. I answered each of them that yes, it's overkill for me to use it. And regarding this argument, I just want to say that it's not always good to follow the crowd, because potentially the hardest way could be the easiest one. Advantages of our MVVM architecture, for me, is a nice way to keep the state of UI in terms of simple struct. This is the only pros, and I'm wondering if using simple struct like this is still using MVVM architecture. It's hard to say to me. Disadvantages. Each MVVM implementation which I saw broke up the single responsibility principle because it contains loading data from multiple APIs, filtering data, logic for formatting string composed from several other values, being data source or delegates for UI table view or UI collection views, and saving or persisting data. Poor reusability. A big amount of different things which happened in a single viewModel class makes this class hard to reuse between different view controllers. There are too focused on formatting specific labels, being a delegate or data source to specific table view. Poor testability. Yes, because it's connected with SRP rule. ViewModel handles big amount of logic, and then it's hard to test, or at least understand what's going on under the hood. To be sure that we are on the same page, this is the kind of pain that can come from ViewModels or any other class which are trying to do too much. It's still more code to write. Yes, because the original in MVVM implementation created by Microsoft easily allows to create data bindings. These data bindings saved a lot of needless code, but here you need to write extra code on your own. And I would like you to remember 3 things after this presentation. First, which I heard from the guy who is an architect in our company, and is, I think, really important thing. Architecture and design pattern are to solve problem, not to create them. And I have feeling that most people choose MVVM because they want to get rid of our massive view controllers. But like I said previously, they end up with massive view model. Second thing, please don't put network calls, logic, and different action to your view model. Use your view model as a simple dump struct. It's just a description of our view. And last but not least, don't repeat mistakes from your previous projects. Here you have all references which I used to prepare this presentation. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and now I will be glad to answer any of your questions.
Так, ну почему-то я не вижу лес рук. Может быть, я слеп, и все подняли руки, а я никого не вижу? Или это как раз-таки тот случай, когда у вас сейчас нет вопросов, а потом Матeusz не сможет со сцены сойти?
I heard that you received this after a question, so
Да.
maybe it's worth it.
Последний шанс получить супермагнитики и футболку, кто не успел.
Okay, there's...
Да. Отлично.
And feel free to make a tweet.
So I've got one question.
Okay.
You said that, well, testability is a question. So from your perspective, how to write better testable code? Specifically, how can we cover the view controller with the unit tests from your perspective?
Okay, so the question is, if I understand correctly, how to write code which is easily to test. Okay, so the answer is really easy. Try to do it in TDD, because when you write test first, you think about implementation before you write anything in production code, and make your class short. It's always good to it's much easier to understand when your class is short than when it contains, for example, I remember core data manager in one of project which has 3,000 lines of code. Come on, how it's possible to go through it and understand what's going on there? So make your class short, try to make your class short, and try to write tests first. Because after, if your class, even if it goes too long, you can easily refactor it and can be sure that you don't destroy anything because you have tests. So you have quite fast feedback. I said quite fast because it's not fast as in other technologies, but still you receive feedback about that, and you will be sure that you won't damage anything. I'm not sure if it answer your question, but if you have any other, I will try to answer.
Еще вопросы?
Any other?
Ребят, если хотите задать вопрос на русском, задавайте на русском, я переведу.
Yeah, it's a good. I understand this.
Hey.
Even I don't know Russian.
Mateusz, hey.
Okay.
Hello. How are you doing?
Hi.
So thank you very much for your presentation. I'd like to ask you one question.
Okay.
Why you use view controllers instead use view?
Okay, so putting logic to view, it's not a good idea because it should be a dumb representation of UI elements. So it's good to have logic in an object who is a controller. So I heard many discussion with it, with your questions, because it's always hard to prove why we should do that. But the main thing is that I see the view like simple representation of user interface, so it shouldn't contain logic. So controller is a place where we should control the logic.
Okay, thank you very much. I see your opinion. Thank you very much.
Так, окей. Если больше вопросов нет, будем потихоньку заканчивать. Mateusz, I have a little present for you, our traditional rabbit named Oscar. So you can...
Oscar, yeah?
Yeah, so you can brag to your friends that you've got an Oscar from Belarus.
Great.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming here and sharing with us.
Thank you as well. It was a huge pleasure to be there, and it was first time in Belarus, and I hope that not last.
Yeah, we hope so too. Ребята, сейчас мы заканчиваем, но имейте в виду, что у нас будет скоро, по-моему, 40 минут закрытия конференции в зеленом зале, но покидать этот зал лучше через улицу, потому что там все еще идет доклад. Давайте еще раз поблагодарим спикера. Спасибо вам, что пришли сегодня на нашу синюю сцену. Увидимся.